and trying to think about loads of different strategies. None of those has taken me any great time to make or set up, but they're things that I think are going to take my learners a bit of time to get through, and if they do finish things off quickly, they're quite open-ended. There's again, questions in the PLR document there from the numeracy maths team. Big open-ended questions like, what do you wonder about this number, that are going to keep your learners going for a wee bit longer. If you're more confident, they're more confident, I'd be having finishing tasks like, make me a video about this, go and do a research project and show me information about this. So that's a quick bit with the classwork for numeracy. I'm just going to go to literacy. Before I do, I can see my Teams is flashing. I'm going to check and see if I've got any comments or anything. No, it must be in a different channel. So I'll go into this, and again, I'd rather do this and leave questions to the end, so if people don't have any questions, want to head off, they can do. But if people have got questions, I'm happy to stay on at the end and cover things again in a wee bit more depth. So for my reading here, again, if I just go in and have a look at it, I've stuck to comprehension here. I think it works quite well in the platform. I'm sure, again, you have your own ideas about other parts, listening and talking and writing as well. Same bit, learning intention, success criteria, instructions, no points. I can add a due date here, so I want it, it's due for Friday the 15th, because it's for next week, so I'm handing it out, it's going in the 11th. I'm going to make it available just now, but it's due on Friday. I've added a video here that I want them to watch as the text. So again, we've got some reading books in school, but we don't have access to those at the minute. So I'm going to use online free resources through Globe particularly, and there's loads of others. One of my colleagues in the literacy and English team, Julie's going to provide some links to that, which I'll share in the PowerPoint after the session. So I'm just using Slippery Tail. It's a story I loved, done it with a few different classes. I was actually lucky enough, I had one class I taught this to in primary 4, and I got them again in primary 6 a couple of years later, and then straight away they says, could we do the story about the frog again? None of them ever came back and asked me if they could do the Biff, Chip and Kipper book again, so, or any other reading books. So but learners quite often ask me to do some of these stories again, because they really engage with the fact it's film as well, I think. But a fantastic wee story here. So I want my learners to watch it. That's free for them to access through Glow. So if you're not using screenshots already, no Glow blogs, go to Glow Launchpad, you go into the app library and you're looking for screening shots. You can see I've already got it in mine. I use it a lot, screening shots, and you've got its sister site. These are fictional stories. Sister site, Scotland on Screen, which is archive footage, so it's non-fiction text. So really good to have the balance of both. There's some really good geographical stuff in here, sort of locality based. So I know there's a film in there about Largs, and it's all about, I think there's an amusement park in Largs, stuff about Glasgow streets. So again, if you're working in a school in Glasgow in particular, then that's really contextual. It's something you could have your learners looking at and saying, what looks different about this picture of Glasgow? So for me, there's tons and tons of mileage in there. I did with one of my P6 classes, we looked at a video about new police recruits in Glasgow, and it was from the 70s, I think, and the thing that jumped out, I asked them, what do you notice about the picture? And it was the lack of traffic. It was nothing even about the context of the police, but to be able to look at Glasgow on video in the 70s was, in colour, was something very different for them, and they were amazed. So we ended up doing a wee bit of research about, when did traffic increase and why wasn't there traffic before the kind of late 90s as much, was when we kind of found the biggest spike in traffic. So that was really interesting. I thought there were tons of mileage in these resources from Screen and Shots and Scotland on Screen. They're all free and Glow, loads of films, and each film comes with its own activities. So there's some questions here, some tips for watching. So again, if you're the teacher and you've never done film literacy, here's some questions and pointers to give your learner, or again, for adults to be doing it at home when they're watching it with their children, and young people, and giving them that wee bit of support. There's questions for adults to ask them. So what do you notice? So they could be watching along, and there's plenty of instruction there. And again, analysing and creative things like, we ended up doing a recount. We did the film as a comprehension text, and then what the learners wanted to do was a bit of writing on it. We did a recount as the main character's a frog, falls in love, and my P4s wrote a recount of that from the point of view of the frog, and the level of writing in that was fantastic. It was the best they'd done that term, and I felt it was because they really understood that film. They were able to connect with it, and they showed that in their comprehension, and then following up with the writing. So
For me, it's one of my favourites. There's loads of other resources, but I like it because it's in Glow as well. It's one less password or permission you need. I've made a comprehension. Again, I've done a Jamboard. And what I've done is I've used the examples from my literacy colleagues. So I've put this reading strategies image on here. You can find that on their PLC and on the National Improvement Hub if I'm right. If Julie's there, can correct me at the end if that's somewhere that I've said the wrong place there. But I've just taken a screenshot of it and uploaded that. And again, that might be really useful again for adults at home. You know, Dad, I finished the work the teachers gave me. It's only taken me 10 minutes and it should take me half an hour. But as an adult, I'd be able to look at this and say, okay, let's look at after reading. So can you summarise the content in note form? Or did it end the way? So you're giving them those prompts again that could definitely be used by adults to extend that learning. Or you could say to the learners, pick a question for afterwards that create your own version of the story. So they might go and do that on their iPad, make a wee animation or whatever, depending on their confidence with their digital literacy there. So I've added that on, I think, just a wee useful bit of guidance. So I've used those sorts of questions and some of the questions from Slippery Tail as well. And I've created this wee sort of 4 quadrants bit here. So before they start watching, they're doing a bit of prediction for the comprehension. So what do they think the story's about? Do they know anything, etc.? So you can read those questions there and they can just write on that with a pen, or they can add a text box to answer it, blah, 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 blah. And one of the ones that a lot of people really like is you can use sticky notes here. So I can put my answer in a sticky note, and I can put my sticky note under the heading, and that can be quite nice if you're doing lots of quick fire for the next part. So the next page I've created is during watching. So as they're watching it, is there anything that surprises them? Anything they didn't see coming as they were watching? So they can just be adding any wee notes that they do. Oh, I thought this, I thought that. I'm just typing notes as I go on my post-its, and then I can put them under the appropriate headings after watching. So that could be a strategy you want to teach. Again, we did some webinars, myself and my colleagues in the Literacy and English team before Christmas. Those are available to watch again on YouTube, and we looked at primary and secondary in particular webinars. But one of the ones we talked about, a huge part, the research around reading on screen. So again, whether it's a text or watching a video again, but try to get your learners to really concentrate, really focus on the importance of note making and note taking, and then using those notes to inform their understanding. So it's great they're taking notes, but what I'd like them to do is use that again in the next step. So again, it's good that it's all in the same place. It's all under the one assignment here. They can make the notes in the Jamboard, and then they're going to do a quiz for me in a moment as well. And the last part is after they've watched it, same thing. Try to echo some of the questions from the start and some others. So do you have the answers to any of the questions you asked at the start? And again, for me to come on as a teacher and see that, if they've filled that out, I've got some great insight into their thinking and their understanding and the way they've organised that, whether it's writing post-its, that using the text, how they've organised it. They might want to draw wee pictures about things or whatever they like, they could draw. I thought actually this one linked to that as well. These two go quite well together, but maybe they could go in here too, so they can annotate all over that page, make it as messy as they need it to, but they can show their thinking there as well. So I think really useful to be able to use that Jamboard. And again, you might even want to do a separate one for before watching, where they all access it as a class and they can all put on their thoughts before watching, but then the during and after are individual to them. They're unique for assessment purposes. So depends how you need it to be, or perhaps again you want them to do a review, and after watching, that's when they all collaborate. So whatever you need them to do, you can do that with Jamboard. And you can see here, when I set this one up, I did it right the first time, and each student will get a copy. And that means when the student opens this up, when they click Jamboard, it will create a new copy just for them that nobody else can see or read or write on apart from the teacher. And the last wee part, I've already shown you again with forms, but again, I found a copy of the film on YouTube. Forms will only take YouTube as an embedded video, but there's a YouTube version of the film. I can watch that again and do this task. So rather than having to open it up and Glow, and that might be a bit of a pain if I'm accessing this website on my mobile phone, it might end up being a wee bit footery and quite small. But if I give them it on the form, it's going to pop up on the screen quite well. Forms adapts really well to mobile, we've found. And these questions you might well recognise. I've not marked them correct or incorrect because they're quite open, and that's maybe a wee bit tricky when you're asking for an open question like that. Did you enjoy the film? You can't have a correct yes or no, but I am asking for justification there. So they've got lots of space. They can type away, they can put their answer in, and they can write, they can put their thoughts on that and submit it. It means it's a wee bit harder. You can't do the self-marking that you can with multiple choice if it's open-ended questions, but it depends on what you need them to do. If you can do some quite literal questions that are open-ended or that are quite closed, and you can say, you know, who was the main character? And it was the frog. But again, with that, you'll find difficulties. You'd have to go multiple choice for that, because if they write the frog or a frog or the wee green frog, those are all different answers. That would confuse forms. So maybe if you're quite closed questions for literal, you maybe want to use multiple choice, and then for your kind of evaluative questions, you're going to have them open-ended text answers. So you can mix and match as you go, but I've got my film there, I've got my questions. These questions are just copied straight off of the classroom activities. So again, saving me time. All I had to do was copy and paste that into my form as the question. So for me, I found that was very quick. It was much quicker than maybe making a worksheet. This is interactive. It formats really well with mobile phones. That's a big one we've found about forms. Works really well on mobiles, and lots of learners are accessing on mobiles. Might be the only device they can access on. You could potentially, again, you could upload a PowerPoint into the assignment, or a slides, Google Slides, and you could say to them, I want you to complete some slides for your answers and put an answer to each question on each slide. Whatever you like, it's really up to you. How you could use docs, again, have a classic worksheet in docs, but for me, I think if I'm asking questions, I'm using forms. It formats really well, and again, I can use the multiple choice sort of questions for really easy, quick assessment, feedback, and monitoring the progress. And again, I like the Jamboard for writing on, because I think it's a wee bit more open-ended, a bit more freedom than using docs, for example, where I can only really kind of type on it. So, but again, for your learners, if it is docs, if I can just show you very quickly, it might be the learner that requires a wee bit of support. So it might well be you want them to use docs, and you could make it again a worksheet with the questions. There is an option, if you're using Chrome, certainly you can talk to the document and it would type the words on the screen for you. So that might be something that learners need for that. So that's my ideas, my thinking on having numeracy and literacy tasks set up. Again, those are quite easy to duplicate and replicate, edit them. If I'm using forms, I can go back and change the questions each time, or make a copy and then change the questions. And it saves me just that wee bit of time having to go and find lots of different resources all the time. I'm thinking screen and shots, particularly for literacy, and the MathSpot materials for numeracy, bits I can keep going back to. My learners become familiar with them, and that makes it a wee bit easier for them to use it when they're familiar with it. So I can introduce new learning because they're familiar with the MathSpot materials, for example. So I'm introducing place value, or we're adding two-digit numbers, and I want them to use manipulative materials for that. They're familiar with that process, and that makes it a wee bit easier for them to do that independently when they're at home and they don't have me there supporting them all the time. So I'm trying to build some sort of routine here. For me, it's an assignments, and what's really good is I can then look, if I go into marks, and I can see for each learner in the reading comprehension, I can have a look at their submission, so I can go and see what they've handed in. So I can look and see, so if A. Cantley had filled in their form, I'm able to go look at their Jamboard and see what they've put on their Jamboard. I'd be able to have a look through that. Again, I can do that per learner, and I can add any comments. I can say that's great, great work there. So I can add that feedback on at the end, and I can post that back to them and let them know how they've got on with that. Like, I can open it up and have a look at the Jamboard in a whole new window. I can open up the actual Jamboard and write my feedback onto that. You know, big tick, great. Easier with my text editor, wouldn't I? Great job, or keep going with this, or have you looked at that answer, or have you considered this? So whatever feedback I need to give, I can open there, and you'll see that this is A. Cantley's copy of it. It's not the generic class one. So you can go in and have a wee look and go through some of those examples. For me, I'm just thinking that's really useful to be able to open it up and see it for each learner. And again, I can give them their feedback using the rubric depending on the task here. So I'm just going to see if my
place value. So I can see it's been assigned, and I can see if they've handed it in or not. Quite useful to have a look at that, and again I can go and open up the forms and see what answers I've got to that. So bits that are useful for classroom management. I'm thinking if I've got one place I can keep going back to, I can have format for that learning. I've created a link to that, so again when I share the slides at the end of this, you can click that link, and if you need to join the class for it, there's the class code, and you can join my demo class. You can have a look at that assignment demo and how I've set it up and some of the materials if that's any use to you there. There's a couple of links there, as I said, my colleague Julie shared me that maybe you don't want to use screenshots, maybe you've got things like the authors on demand where the authors read the book, and you could use that recording that's available from the Scottish Book Trust. Word waves are great for younger learners. We've got a video again on our YouTube channel about how to do that. Julie explains how you could use word waves, so you're reading comprehension, and then again how we can use some digital tools to make responses to that. So a few examples there, and just to finish off then, that coming back to there, it's about that learning and engagement, and if you make it hard to engage, learners will find it harder to engage, obviously. So if you can keep it to the same, and I'm not saying a lack of creativity, but if you can pick some really good robust tasks that your learners can keep coming back to, certainly in the start, then it's going to be a lot easier for them to focus on new learning if you've got a real solid base of the type of tasks you need them to do. And again, as they grow in confidence, as you grow in confidence, it's something I've spoken about with my colleagues in the numeracy and the literacy teams here at Education Scotland, and we will be delivering content in the next few weeks, I think, about taking perhaps certain areas of numeracy or literacy or other curricular areas and being a wee bit more creative and a wee bit more open-ended with the responses. So I'm thinking certainly, again, one of the examples we've got it in our YouTube, I did it as a response to number awareness for the first numeracy mathematics PLR webinar a way back, I think was that in September, about using Book Creator and creating a storybook of number and all the numbers you encounter in the experience. So we could definitely be doing webinars about things like that as we go forward. But what I really wanted, and I hope I've got it across today, is how we can use it to set up the learning, how you can maintain some quality of teaching, whether that's using your videos or just good solid materials that are all there, they're all explained as clearly as you are able to, whether it's a video, some slides, a link to a BBC bite size, whatever you need, but they all go in the same place for your learners and their families to access. Also considering families and how they're supporting that learning at home as well. And again, I think flipped rather than live, because it means if one of the adults or both the adults or whoever's at home are working as well, which they probably are working from home, or there's other things going on, you just don't know. There's loads of things happening just now. So I'm just thinking flipped learning is quite straightforward. You provide the materials, your learners have a go, and then you can feed back and give them support afterwards and use that to make the next steps in the learning. That's the reason I've went for that model. And again, about assessment, Jamboard and things, and if I set it as an assignment, you can provide feedback and comment, as you saw there in the end on the Jamboard. Forms, you can set it to automatically feedback and assess if you're using multiple choice, certainly. A wee bit harder with open-ended or text answers. But again, even if it's not the automatic answering, forms is really easy to go back and put a written response on it as well. So hopefully covered those. I know I've tried to go through quite a lot of different things quickly. I've not really touched on things like docs and slides and spreadsheets or anything else. For me, I thought these are the tools I would certainly be starting with: assignments, Jamboard and forms. And Jamboard is just so open-ended, I can do so many things with it. And for me, that was the real reason for focusing on those tools and bringing it all together under assignments. So I hope that's proved useful. We are a wee bit ahead of time. The last wee bit I'm just going to ask, if I go through the last couple of slides, we've got our DigiLearn Scot website. You find that at digilearn.scot. That's maybe where you came to book this. There is an option on the home page, if I just pop that up and you're looking for that icon. If you're using digital to support the learning or develop the learning in your class or your school, we'd love to hear about it. We've got over 100 stories now from practitioners all across Scotland, different ages, stages and sectors. A couple of sentences or a paragraph at most, videos, PowerPoints, slides, anything you've got to share, go really well here as well. So click the link,
give us a bit of information about it, let us know where you are, what you're up to, what the impact of digital's been. That's great, and lots of educators are finding that really important and really useful to be able to go to share and practice and see what the community is sharing. So you see lots and lots of different, there's one straight away about literacy, Susan Galloway from Drumchapel in Glasgow, talking about how she's using forms to teach her senior phase English class. So lots and lots of examples in there from schools and teachers all across the country. So we'd love you to be able to add to that for us. That's it for me, other than thanks very much for joining us. I hope you found this useful.